My guest who's with me on the Jersey Central Newsmaker Hotline, and he's joining me to talk about and recap the two-night Democratic presidential candidates debate. Here to just talk about the winners and the losers. He's a former Time Magazine senior reporter, currently teaches political science at St. Peter's University in Jersey City, New Jersey. Great to welcome back Professor Alan Sanders to WCTC. Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Very good, Bert. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I purposely wanted to wait until today so that we could kind of take a look back at Wednesday and Thursday. So thank you so much for making yourself available today. Going back to Wednesday night, a lot of people are saying that it could have been Cory Booker who kind of came out as the real winner. He had the most television time. He had the most microphone time. I thought he handled himself very well. How would you say he fared? And if it wasn't him, who do you think had the best Wednesday night?
Yes, I think he was one of the candidates that came out. I'm not sure I would call him a winner, but I think he made his case and he was noticed. And that's really what you try to do in any first debate. So in that sense, he's a winner. I thought the one who came out perhaps a little above him was Secretary Julian Castro, or former Secretary Julian Castro. He showed that he had command of the issues. He was crisp. And, of course, he went after Beto O'Rourke on the question of immigration. And so he made a very strong case for himself as being on top of the issues, and of course you have to agree with him, but capable of holding his own and attacking those that he believes are on the wrong side of the issues. The other one on Wednesday night, which of course everybody knew, and that's Senator Elizabeth Warren. She was quite forceful in the first half of the debate, but I thought she kind of evaporated during the second half and made me wonder whether she had the durability to engage in a 2-hour debate and therefore in a long campaign. Nonetheless, I'm sure her supporters were quite pleased with her during the first half of the debate. So that was sort of my assessment of that first half of the 20 candidate debate.
Is it just too many people on stage at one time, Professor? Because I know this has the feel of a specifically sort of made-for-television event, and there's a lot of voices, there's a lot of activity. The moderators are doing their best when you have 10 people that all want to talk at the same time, and there was a technical glitch on Wednesday that got some attention as well. Is there just too many people taking part in this? Is 10 people on stage at one time too much?
Well, I think so, but on the other hand, this is democracy, and when you've got an unpopular president, the opposition party is going to try to throw everything at him, including as many candidates as possible who think they have a good chance of a president who's never been able to garner a majority popular support either in the election or in the polls. So that's to be expected. But I think in any first debate, whether you've got a lot of candidates or just a few, for the lesser known ones, and there will always be lesser known ones, the first debate is an introductory kind of presence, and that's what you aim to do. And I think Booker, Castro came out there and made their case for themselves. I also thought Elizabeth Warren, but of course she's a better-known personality, also came out and made themselves known. If there's a loser from the first debate, I really do think it's Beto O'Rourke, who, coming from a border state of Texas, should have been prepared for an immigration question and didn't seem to be prepared. In fact, his whole presence on stage seemed to be more scripted than really thoughtful, and I thought that he came out on the negative end of that debate, meaning that I don't think he made a good case for himself.
For New York Mayor de Blasio, was he just kind of like a non-factor on Wednesday night?
No, I'm glad you bring him up. I think that he did strike out. I mean, of course, we know that he's not all that popular in New York City, and many people wondered, why did you enter the race? But I thought he made a very good case for the liberal positions, or the more liberal positions of the Democratic Party, and I think he surprised many people by his eloquence, by his terseness and crispness, and the fact that he just stood there and very much made the case for his views. And so I think he was a surprising element. I'm not sure how that would register beyond, the immediate debate, but he certainly did stand out too. So I think you're right in pointing him out.
And forwarding to last night, I was really, really impressed with Kamala Harris. She's on stage. She's right next to the two front runners. She didn't back down, Professor. I think she is going to be a big challenge to the stale, male, and pale model that has occupied the White House since the day the place opened. So were you impressed at all by her performance?
Yes, indeed. I think contrary to the first debate where there was no real clear winner, if we can use that term, I think in the second debate she really did stand out. She stood out on her political heft. You know, the Democrats are looking for somebody who can actually beat Donald Trump, and that's what most Democrats will tell you. Anybody who can beat him. And that part or that lane has been occupied since he announced by Joe Biden. I think Kamala Harris, by her appearance last night, made it clear that, well, that lane now includes me. She certainly took on the vice president himself, but throughout the debate she was sharp, she was on the issues, and her sound bites undoubtedly were prepared, but they didn't seem to be prepared, and that's important. So she looked like she was on her toes, and that she was right up there and ready to turn on a dime, basically, as the debate continued. So I think she was quite impressive, and she was, I think, the clear winner of last night. I think the second place position, by the way, probably went to Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who also was sharp and crisp and very eloquent, and made the case clear for both where he stands on the issue and for the notion that perhaps it's time for a new generation, a new Democratic generation, to take control of the party and hopefully at the general election of the country.
And following the timeline, Professor, as we lead up to the election day, when do we start to see some of the lesser candidates who maybe aren't really moving the needle and their funding is starting to kind of come into question? When do we start to see some of these lesser candidates kind of bow out of the race?
Well, you know, it tends to take a fair amount of time because you have to sort of run out of gas, and the gas, of course, is the money. Mm-hmm. But I thought, for instance, the so-called fringe candidates, Marianne Williamson and Andrew Yang, last night didn't do much for their candidacy. And so perhaps you will see them leave the race sooner rather than later. As far as the so-called frontrunners are concerned, that takes a much longer time. Clearly, Vice President Biden did not have a good night last night. But you know, if you're a major candidate, you can, if you can do it right, you can get back on your feet and become competitive again. So we'll have to see whether he is able to do that. But certainly the aura of invincibility that he sought to build around his candidacy was pierced last night by Kamala Harris, and we'll have to see whether he can recover. Now, you know, frontrunners very often are the better-known candidates, meaning they're the ones in high office, and sometimes those high offices insulate you from criticism and from being on your toes in debate situations. But certainly Biden in the past has shown that he can recover and that he can be on top of his form. So we'll have to see whether it's just out of practice or whether the vice president's star is slowly fading.
And,
too early to tell.
Yeah, and surprisingly quiet while all this is going on, Professor, is President Trump. Is it perhaps the fact that he's on the other side of the world? He's at the G20 in Japan, several time zones away, and maybe this is just sort of not making him available that he could watch everything that's going on. Just a real quick comment on Twitter here today that he took a shot at Biden and a shot at Sanders. Are you expecting to see more chatter from the president in the coming days?
Oh, undoubtedly. I think he can't really keep his mouth shut. Every day he's got to come out with something because I think in his worldview he's got to be the center of the universe. So even when he's not, he's got to figure out a way, and he tries to figure out a way to be part of the debate.
You know, O.J. Simpson even commented on Twitter, and he's getting 500,000 views every time he puts something up. But not so sure I'd rely on O.J. Simpson for political commentary. But it's a process, and the process is underway. And I'm hoping, Professor, that you'll join us from time to time to update us on some things that are going on. Would you welcome that?
Absolutely. It would be a pleasure.